Charred remains of a husk, vaguely arranged in the shape of a man, stood in an unfathomably inky abyss. Not a speck of light so much as attempted to penetrate the surrounding darkness. For the second time in his life, Dr. Henry Miller was facing his wildest, most crippling fear head-on. Utter and relentless uncertainty. As the Void Walker stood in the darkness, a memory drifted from eye to eye, crossing the bare threshold of what it was and wasn't. A much younger Henry, dressed in a decidedly much dirtier overcoat than he was wearing before, stained with motor oil and grease, carrying traces of sawdust and metallic shreddings in its many fibers and stitches. Dr. Miller, not so much as glancing away from the near-tightened bolt he was adjusting with his rusted wrench, asked his scrawny and deformed assistant a casual question.
Willie.
Dr. Miller casually blurted out, still transfixed by the near-tightened bolt.
Do you think that in theory, different types of nothing could potentially exist?
Dr. Miller's assistant remained leaning against the wall, his vacuous mouth still left blissfully agape.
What's that, Henry?
Nothing,
Miller retorted, before being interrupted by his dim-witted colleague.
Oh, that's fine. Then,
William replied nonchalantly.
could've sworn you'd ask me, eh?
Willie.
Miller stated, retaking control of the narrative and now focused on winding a small metallic spring-loaded mechanism, which looked not unlike a mousetrap attached to a rod-shaped fastener.
Do you think that there's different kinds of nothing in this world, or not?
William placed his expansive palm over his chin, now in deep thought.
Well, probably not, Henry, since you know, nothing is...
William spoke hesitantly.
Well, nothing is just nothing, you know. So I don't see how there could possibly be different types of...
Dr. Miller stopped meticulously recoiling the spring in his hand for a moment, wondering how to explain his vision to his simple friend.
You know, Willie.
Miller mumbled.
Nothing and darkness are very similar to the untrained eye, but fundamentally different, once you notice the difference at least once.
William leaned his head forward, rubbing his mitt-like hands along his plum-hued scalp, almost certainly attempting to run his fingers through hair he didn't have.
Explain.
William demanded of Henry. Henry smiled, coiling the spring again, knowing his trap was set.
You see, Willie.
Henry murmured.
I want you to note exactly what you can see out of both of your eyes right now.
William nodded and gazed forward, absorbing his immediate visible surroundings.
Well,
Henry cooed. William internalized the dingy surroundings of the dark room they found themselves in, now prepared to describe Henry's workshop in detail.
From my left eye.
William started, still gazing fixed upon a horizon far beyond the concrete confines of the room he found himself in.
I can see a table, some tools, some blueprints printed on leftover stock card from one you let me draft up on menus, and my lunchbox. Can forget that.
and what of your other eye?
Henry inquired.
What does that eye see?
Well, obviously, I can see you, winding up some kind of device, ready to put it into your unfinished bomb, right?
Dave responded, now hesitant of whether or not he was bumbling his way into one of Henry's, quite typical, cruel lessons.
Crudely stated, but ultimately correct. Well done.
Henry replied, validating William's response, before giving his partner a second instruction.
Now, close both eyes.
Henry dictated to William. William shut both of his eyes tightly.
Well, now I see nothing, Henry.
William replied, sure of his answer. Due to his lack of visual awareness, William had no time to brace himself before he received an unyielding impact, courtesy of the wrench still in Dr. Miller's left hand. William yelped like a confused animal, held his jaw tightly, and paced a few steps backwards, careful not to expose his back to Henry.
Darkness.
Henry barked, breaking his previously lucid composure, waving his wrench around within striking distance of William.
You didn't see nothing. You saw darkness, William.
Henry slowly turned back to his work and continued cranking the coil of the mechanism that was again holding his sole interest. Now that William was disciplined, Henry didn't bother to turn back to check if William had fled the room. He knew that his assistant wouldn't.
I don't understand.
William stuttered, sniffling back tears. Henry sighed deeply.
Well, yield those incessant waterworks, and tell me what you can see from your right eye, again.
Henry responded nonchalantly. William took a moment to compose himself, and replied to Henry again, reiterating his last answer.
I see you, Henry.
William replied, broken-hearted. Henry grinned, wide and terrible, showing his rarely seen teeth.
Now, close your right eye, then.
Henry responded.
But, this time, keep the left one open, so you can still see the tools and our blueprints sitting on the desk.
William nodded, following the command faithfully and without hesitation.
What can you see from your right eye now?
Henry asked William. William stood in silence for a moment, before responding with the nature of his sad, pitiful realization.
Nothing.
William replied, his greatest fear coming to light.
Where I saw you, I now see nothing.
Henry chuckled.
Nothing may appear to be remarkably similar to darkness, before you notice its key difference.
Henry stated.
In darkness, there is life, hiding behind a threshold of undetectability. In every abyss, potential for something to lurk beyond the confines of where simple observation merely cannot reach. Darkness is simply that which light cannot touch.
Henry finished tightening the coil at last, finishing the final touches on his masterpiece.
Within nothing, there is no light trapped beneath the waves of obscurity, no surrounding air to fill the vacuum, no substance to obscure any nuance, oblique or otherwise, no potential or sustenance. Nothing is a cancer that cannot be filled, cannot be quenched, and will consume any space that simply isn't. A place where light could be, but won't ever be.
Henry affectionately placed his hand on William's now bloodied chin.
Now that you see it too, don't you want to protect others from it?
Henry asked him.
Don't you want to stay here, in the light, knowing that I won't let you ever become nothing?
William forced a shaky smile and frantically nodded, tears in his eyes. Henry's face contorted into a smile, no less sinister, but noticeably wider, but with closed lips, holding back all of the words Henry's conscience would be commanding Henry to warn William with, had Dr. Miller actually possessed a conscience, no matter how minute. Dr. Miller stretched his hand out whimsically, referring to the costume now sitting on the table.
How does it look, William?
Henry asked, turning to face his partner, who turned back, fixating himself on the costume to stop his very being from straying towards inconsolability.
Isn't that mine?
William stuttered, pacing slowly towards it. Henry chuckled.
Yes.
Henry responded, needing no more words to complete the exchange. William's hand outstretched slowly, running down the stitched curvature of the suit's hips.
It matches yours.
William stated, noting the golden fabric with purple highlights.
It's gold.
Henry's mouth stretched into something not quite a smile, not quite a grimace, gaping and soulless.
You deserve no less, partner.
Henry replied, putting a hand on William's shoulder.
And nothing could change that.
As the memory drifted from Henry's eyes, so did the last speck of remaining light along with it. The vision before Henry proved his theories, right in ways that he never hoped he would have to face. Prison, The void in which he spent 40 grueling years, he could now see wasn't quite a void as he'd pictured it. He dwelled in a place visually not unlike where he was now, a place without light or warmth, a place that existed outside of light and warmth, but existed as a void, waiting to be filled by both. But unlike that place, this place didn't merely lack visible light, it lacked darkness to obscure anything that wasn't himself. Instead, he merely saw nothing. Henry attempted to say aloud, but the words came out in his head, as there was no air for the words to travel through.
I can't be dead.
Henry thought to pace, but there was nowhere for him to go, no way to tell if he was moving at all.
There's an infinite number of parallel dimensions and timelines, from dimensions 1 through 10, impossibility to the event horizon.
Henry rambled, attempting to justify to himself that which he'd just realized wasn't truly proven by result.
In one of those infinite instances, I must be alive and breathing. Schrödinger, Bohr, Heisenberg, they knew.
Henry began sweating.
If there's infinity possibility, all extending from the unconfirmed wave function, in at least one of those dimensions, I must be alive. There has to be a way back.
Henry gasped for air that was no longer there.
I can't be dead, for if I wasn't, I wouldn't be, and until that happens, and it won't.
Henry continued to bumble through his frantic self-justification.
Like the ship of Theseus, we are concepts, always changing, being assembled and disassembled, but a change of location doesn't. I'm still here, and until I die, which I can't observe, because if I was to, if I were dead, I wouldn't be around to observe it. Therefore, I cannot be dead. I must be the version of myself that will continue to live, the protagonist. I must exist.
A set of eyes appeared before the Void Walker. In the darkness, somehow not quite there, but undoubtedly inescapable. As the crimson eyes gazed into the Void Walker's very being, or lack thereof, Henry felt a hunger emanate from the eyes, and a voice come from deep within his brain, chilling and certain, undoubtedly speaking on behalf of the eyes.
Who's to say that you aren't dead?